first Sonic Advanced is not a game I owned as a kid, but still, the Sonic Advance trilogy is something I do have immense nostalgia for. I was playing Game Boy Advance games until I was about 7 years old, so I would just play whatever was thrown at me. And Sonic Advance 3 was something I did get my hands on, and I love a lot. But it wasn't until way later that I tried out this first game. My big takeaway for Sonic Advance 1 is that it's pretty hard, especially the Chaos Emeralds. But other than that, I don't remember much. In order to master this huge 58 achievement set, I'm gonna have to beat the game as every character, get all of the Chaos Emeralds, get the true ending, do speedrun challenges, and beat the game without losing a single life. Of course, there are some other miscellaneous ones along the line, but we'll talk about those during the run. Let's get started. Naturally, I started my first run as Sonic because, well, he's on the box, so I figured it's best to try him first. My plan for this first run is just beat the game. I'm not going to worry too much about Chaos Emeralds because you need to do a ton of exploring just to find them. And when you do, the special zones are very hard. I'm going to save the exploring for when I play as Tails later on. But for now, Neo Green Hill Zone is exactly what it sounds like. I love the trend of not making new stages and reusing old templates. But honestly, it's classic Sonic fun, so I'm not going to complain. Pretty quickly, I got my first achievement for grabbing 100 rings, so that's pretty awesome. Since this stage features a ton of super fast set pieces, it's pretty quick. Neo Green Hill Act 2 is once again just classic Sonic gameplay brought over to the Game Boy Advanced, which I have to say is pretty awesome. As a kid, I had Sonic 2 on one of those plug-and-play consoles, so having the option to play something with similar gameplay on the go was awesome when I was younger. This game has the same formula as Sonic 2 as well. 2 acts per zone with the boss at the end of Act 2. This boss actually takes place on the Golden Gate Bridge, and it's very easy. Eggman's got a massive hammer that goes back and forth, and we just need to hit him a few times before he's down. For beating this stage, I unlocked an achievement for beating Neo Green Hill Zone, and then specifically for beating it as Sonic. Zone 2 is Secret Base Zone, and already the theme feels kind of endgamey. Like it already feels like Scrap Brain or Metropolis Zone. It definitely seems like Sonic Advance has a lot more vertical movement compared to some of the classics. I feel like there are more paths per level, which just goes to show how great Sonic Team has gotten with level design. Well, for now, but we'll get to that later. The stages flow very nicely so far. Even though I'm being bounced around a lot, it feels like I'm constantly making progress and not hitting walls, or falling into endless pits. I also like these bounce platforms because Sonic does a cool flip. Act 2 ends with Pogo Stick Eggman, which I feel like might have been even easier than Hammer Eggman. He just kind of bounces around a bit and you have to hit him a few times until he jumps really high. And when he does, he can hit you with a super dive to the ground. But we wrap that up and get an achievement for beating Secret Base Zone. Casino Paradise Zone! Yes! Gambling! Yes! I don't know what it is with Sega and making so many different casino-themed stages. It's in so many Sonic games. No matter though, since they're always a blast. We've got flippers, bounce things, bumpers, balloons, it's all here. Act 2 compared to the previous one feels a bit more inspired than the first. I feel like there are more sections where I had options with different paths, but still it was very short. The boss here is a bit of a guessing game where you need to try and react quickly to where Eggman is. Unfortunately though, this is the first place I died and lost a life, so that no death achievement is out of the question for now. But I came back and cleaned that up for another completion achievement. Next up is Ice Mountain Zone, which both serves as the ice and water level. Stay up top and you're in the ice world, fall down below, you're in the underwater world. Simple as. I wasn't too familiar with the level layout, so I tended to fall into the deep blue, but the game can be pretty forgiving with bubbles, so it rarely became a problem. To be fair, sometimes I felt like I was doing well, then I just get sent flying downwards. So it wasn't always my fault. I love to do full analyses of each level, but to be fair, a lot of the time there isn't much to say other than I held right, jumped, and made it to the end. Also, my long-form Sonic game retrospective era is behind me. I prefer to do the easier content now. But at the end of Act 2, we come across what I feel like is the hardest boss in the game, Underwater Icicle Falling Boss. Basically, what you need to do is time your jumps really well to either hit Eggman or go for air. It took a lot of getting used to, and I had to really take my time with this one, but I got it on try number 2. Reusing another old Sonic theme, this next zone is Angel Island Zone. This is kind of the point in the game where a lot of speed is replaced with tighter platforming, which I honestly won't complain about since they do add in some good set pieces along the way to break up the challenges. This might be a hot take, but I do like hard, more explorative Sonic. Don't get me wrong, I'm a huge fan of Green Hill and Chemical Plant, but a lot of the time it feels like there's only one really fast solution and not a lot of challenge. So I do find some extra value value in this type of stage. You can tell there's been a bit of a tick up in difficulty because I really am taking things way slower and dying. I needed to start to get a lot more careful since I wasn't familiar with the level design, since like I said, I probably haven't played this game in close to a decade. Sometimes the level design is unfair, but for the most part, it isn't too bad to get through. This is actually the first and only time I came across a special stage in this playthrough, which, God, I don't know if this is poorly designed or I need to get my eyes checked because I swear I'm collecting a lot of these rings. While I don't remember too much about this game, this is something I definitely do remember. If I recall, when I last went through this game, I gave up on 100% because the special zones were just too hard. I failed, by the way. At the end of this Angel Island journey is a fight with slightly discolored Knuckles with golden gloves. I found you need to use this special attack thing in order to damage him, but if you time things just right, you can basically incapacitate him and he's easy to beat. Egg Rocket Zone is a very cool theme. It takes place on an airship or rocket that has this part I died on twice. Oh boy, we're getting close to a game over. Hey, life. I know earlier I said the difficulty was going up and you need to take things slower, but this is where that really becomes the focus. The whole stage is tight platforming and you start to get punished for going too fast. But here's the thing. The whole time there's a timer counting down, and as you get to certain points on the airship, it'll basically shed the section you just came from. So you need to play efficiently. For the second portion of the first act, I made it to the next part of the ship with only 44 seconds to spare. But now we're kind of like in space, so that's sick. And also we're upside down sometimes because gravity. Still though, we have the timer, so I couldn't stop to smell the roses. I kept on keeping on for an achievement. Then Act 2 is technically Cosmic Angel Zone, which reminds me a lot of the Casino Zone with all of its flashy colors, but it's harder and gravity again. To be honest, the game design started to get on my nerves with these past couple levels. I am taking a lot of blind leap of faiths, just hoping that the developers were nice enough to not put an endless pit or spikes at the bottom of my jump, which they weren't nice enough to do. So naturally, I had to sort of memorize what was coming up with trial and error. Eventually, we come to the boss, which is honestly pretty hard. This time the ground isn't full solid, so when you get hit, your rings tend to fall into the void. So I did die a few times here, even getting a game over. When this happened, I honestly thought I was screwed and was gonna have to replay the whole game, but thankfully it saves your progress. The next few times through the level were easy, and honestly this stage was very short. But back to the boss, and I figured out you sort of need to flip him by jumping near him, and then boom, done. The last zone in the game, for now, is X Zone, which is just the final boss stage. This time around though, you fight two mini-bosses on the way to the true final boss, which are just the first boss from Sonic 1 and the first boss from Sonic 2. Honestly, that's pretty cool. They both only take 4 hits each, so they were more of a nostalgia set piece more than anything. The true boss of X Zone is this machine, which I guess has a few attacks it rotates through. This hand which shakes you, this like lava ball, and this beam. While Eggman goes for an attack, he leaves himself vulnerable and you have a short window to hit him. I don't know, this was honestly very underwhelming and easy, for a reason. For winning, I got the achievement Fastest Thing Alive for beating the zone as Sonic, and also the end for beating X Zone in general. But before I move on in the game, I want to quickly shameless self-plug, just for a second. I work super hard on getting these videos out consistently, and it really helps motivate me when I see the support you guys bring through subscribing, liking, and commenting. And like I've said the past few videos, once I hit 5,000 subscribers, I'm gonna do the Super Mario 64 bonus set, which is like very hard. So help me reach the goal. Thank you. So now that I've played through the game once as Sonic, it's time to move on to the next character, Tails. And since Tails has the ability to fly, I'm gonna take this playthrough extremely slow so I can try and find all of the special zones. Also, it's good to know that Tails has this tail whip move which can hurt enemies. So let me talk about the way that the special zones work. In 7 levels of the game, there's a special spring that transports you to the special zone. Notice I said there are only 7 levels with this spring, and there are 7 emeralds. Thankfully though, as long as you beat the level after collecting the Chaos Emerald, your collection progress should save, and across all 4 characters, so there is some level of leniency here. I'm gonna use this playthrough as a bit of a guide to help you find each special zone. So here goes. And shout out to this video, which was incredibly helpful during the exploring process. Thank you. The first special zone spring is in Neo Green Hill Zone Act 1. For this, you have to stay on the upper path throughout the whole level. The best landmark is the half pipe carved out of the wall here. Right on top of it is a yellow spring that will lead you right to the special stage. And the way that the special stages themselves work is that you're falling from the sky and you need to collect a certain number of rings. Like I mentioned a couple couple of minutes ago, these are very hard. It's challenging to judge where the rings really are since the developers decided to try 3D falling on the Game Boy Advanced. As you can see, I missed a lot of rings that I was certain I had hit, but I failed and kept trucking through Neo Green Hill for the completion achievement with Tails. The next spring is in Secret Base Zone Act 2. Once again, keep on the upper path, past these two springs, on the hooks above the moving platform, down the loop on these bounce pads, through this tunnel machine on the left side after the springy thing, through this back and forth section, but make sure to slow down unlike I did, because I sped past where I needed to go and got stuck. Look, the spring was right here, I just went too fast. So I missed that one this time around, but I know where it is. Beat the boss and it's on to the next one. Special Stage 3 is in Casino Paradise Act 1. Basically, you want to get to this section with the 3 balloons and the invincibility star. This is like a landmark part of the stage, so you shouldn't have too much trouble getting here. Take it really slow in this next part, because if you're going too fast, you'll launch right by the spring, which is right on top of this platform with a paddle. I failed the zone again, by the way, and got through the rest of Casino Paradise. Now, this is different. Both Axe and Ice Mountain Zone have a special stage. A great landmark to keep in mind for you to know if you're going the right way is this cave with the checkpoint. Stay on the top path, hit this spring, go left a couple jumps, and you're there. Once again, a failure though. These are really hard. But before I go on to show where the other special spring is, I managed to get up to 9 lives during Act 1, so I got an achievement for that. Act 2, stay on the top path, go past this spring that shoots you back to the left, up this spring in the ice block, onto this red spring. Once you get to this shield bubble here, you know you're going the right way. Across the moving platforms, off this spring, then when you land, fall right off of the left side of the cliff, and there you are. And another failure. But hey, we made it past the boss. Just barely though. I almost died. The Spring and Angel Island Zone Act 2 is the only one I managed to find in my first run through. And honestly, there's a reason for that. It feels very obvious. After you go across this bar on the top path, speed through the tunnel around the loop and up this elevator thing to the left. After that, just follow the platforming right. Don't fall and you're brought right to it. Now though, this is where things get crazy. I actually managed to do well in this special zone. I know what got into me. I got past the halfway point, collected a chow, hit this trick for a ring boost, and made it to the end with 182 rings, just barely collecting my first emerald for an achievement, and made it through Angel Island for another. During the airship level, I collected 200 rings at once for an achievement. My precious! Oh, and for beating the stage. Now onto the 7th and final special zone. But we're gonna need to skip forward in time here to the run I did with Knuckles, because I actually missed this spring on my first time through after I fell down too far. So the way I went as Sonic was the right idea. Top path, through these tight enemy placements, up this wall to the checkpoint, then make sure to go slowly down these ramps, since if you're too quick, you might end up going the wrong way. Then up this wall with the spring, and boom, you're at the last one. No spoilers on how I did on this one though. You'll have to wait a couple minutes. Once making it to the boss though, I barely beat him on my first try and got another completion achievement. And since I had over 9 lives going into X Zone, I got another achievement. Now, some of you might be observant and notice this little icon in the bottom right. This shows that I still have the achievement for beating the game without dying active. I've made it all the way to X Zone deathless, and I could get this really hard achievement out of the way now if I could just beat this level with no problem. Pass Sonic 1 boss, pass Sonic 2 boss, and now let's beat Eggman. Well, I didn't. This was quite upsetting, but hey, we still got a few more runs with Knuckles and Amy where I could potentially do this, so hopefully we get it then. I don't know why this boss was suddenly so hard. I died a few times, but eventually got through it to complete the game as Tails. Next up for characters, we have Knuckles, and he is pretty similar to Sonic and Tails, except he can glide. And he also has his punch attack. For this run and the next couple subsequent runs, I'm going to take the opportunity to try my best and collect as many Chaos Emeralds as I can. At this point, I have 1 out of the 6, so we have a long way to go until I'm done. I went into the special zone in Neo Green Hill Act 1, and actually did decently well. I'd gone and watched a couple of videos of people completing the special zones, and I found that it looked like if I used the trick button, it seemed like it was easier to collect some of the rings. So using that strat, I easily got through the first special zone and got the red emerald. After getting through the rest of this zone, I went into the special stage in Act 2 of Secret Base Zone, and once again did a pretty good job at collecting the rings. Really, this trick really seemed to do wonders for me. I got the blue emerald, and I think now that I've got the idea down, the rest of these shouldn't be too hard. Is what I would say if after finishing up this zone, I didn't fail at getting the next emerald in Casino Paradise Zone. I think the skill barrier for me now is pressing the trick button at the right time through these trick ring thingies. I was trying to press the button right before I hit the ring, but now that I think about it, that was really stupid. I don't know why I was doing it that way. These trick rings grant you 12 extra rings, so they're pretty significant when it comes to collecting. missing them really puts you far back, and that's why I lost this one. I mean, other than missing this entire section. But still, I would have won if I hit the trick. I finish up Casino Paradise, and before I go straight into the next special zone, I want to talk about the shortcomings that Knuckles has as a character. While he can glide and punch, he has a reduced jump height, which can make getting up to certain sections really tough. So trying to find a way to this next special string was hard because of his reduced jump height. This reduced jump height is what made me fall into the water below and not even go into the special stage in Ice Mountain Act 1. But in Act 2, I did make it in, but proceeded to fail anyway. So out of Ice Mountain it is. I didn't have any emeralds to grab in Angel Island, so I quickly made my way through that, and it was the same thing for the airship level. So already we're on to Cosmic Angel Zone, and this stage is the last of the Chaos Emeralds. So I made my way over. Hey, I've seen this footage before! Now we actually get to see how I did. Honestly, not bad at all. I made it through the first half no problem, but in the second half I got baited by this ring placement and ended up getting hit. Not too bad for a first try at this one. I beat the boss in this stage, and it was on to X Zone. I really don't know where my disconnect here is with this boss, but I truly cannot beat it without dying. This time around, I struggled extra for a long time. I lost so many lives, I even needed to use a continue. I would get hit by every single attack type, and even had trouble doing any damage myself. Eventually, I took the coward's approach, where I sat on the opposite side of the battlefield, waited for him to do the hand attack, and that's where I would go in for some chip damage. This took a really long time, but eventually I beat the boss, completing the game as Knuckles. I know that right now it feels like I'm rushing through these completion achievements, and in a way I am. There isn't always something that's interesting to say, considering we've explored all of these stages pretty thoroughly already. And also, some of the achievements down the line are a bit more interesting, so stay tuned for that. But for our final character, Amy, we are forced to play the game a little bit differently. For God only knows what reason, the developers made Amy essentially the hard mode of this game. This is because they decided not to give Amy a spin jump to do damage or a spin dash to build up quick speed. Instead, we're forced to always use her hammer, and if we want to build up speed, well, we have this little skip thing that helps slightly. This makes it so that you need to be a lot more creative when trying to make your way through the stages, especially in parts where you're forced to slow down. Now, Amy does have one saving grace in her kit. She has a super hammer jump that lets you go pretty high by pressing down and B at the same time. So in areas where you don't have enough speed usually, you can find a solution using that jump. Beating the game as Amy is really a great test of your skill. It also makes fighting bosses like the first one in Neo Green Hill a bit more complicated. Good thing I was able to shoehorn talking about this boss in some way. I need an excuse to show the achievement. Instead of being able to just easily jump on his head, you need to be more smart about your hammer usage. I found that getting up behind him and hitting him a couple of times worked the best for me. The boss for Secret Base was kind of similar, but he is way easier to dodge. I went in for hits when it was safe and ran around dodging him the rest of the time. Actually, I kind of just spammed him. In Casino Paradise Zone, I went to the special world in Act 1 and somehow failed again. Embarrassing, to be honest. At the beginning of Act 2, I did this pretty cool shortcut by doing the hammer bounce and had to use it to get up this ramp I was too slow for, which are just a couple of examples of that move in action. Now, I really needed to take this next boss slow and steady. Since I can't jump on him, I need to wait for Eggman to come into my area of effect. So it was just patience, patience, patience until I got enough hits to take him out. In Ice Mountain Act 1, the super jump saved me multiple times getting to the special zone. But once I got here, well, things didn't go so well. And it was this same exact story in Act 2. But hey, the boss was super interesting as Amy. Her hammer bounce lets you go right up above the water so you never have to worry about drowning. And a normal jump gets you close enough to hit Eggman, so this boss becomes way easier with Amy. Angel Island Zone doesn't have much for us to talk about. I did almost die a couple of times, and I want you to notice, we still have the no death run activated, so keep an eye on that. Keep that in the back of your mind. Fighting Knuckles as Amy was pretty fun, because you can spam him with a hammer a bunch. Then I made my way through Egg Rocket Zone with no issues whatsoever. Okay, I'll be real. The platforming was super tough here as Amy. There were a bunch of spots where I needed to get extra creative in order to make it through unscathed. In Cosmic Angel Zone, I unfortunately didn't make it to the special zone, so it was only boss time, where I just barely made it through deathless. Now I have another chance at beating what I assumed would be the hardest achievement in the game. We are on to the final boss, deathless, with 10 rings to our name. No, make that 1. Things are looking really bad. Oh my god, stop getting hit. Eventually though, I remembered the coward's approach. Sit back, wait for Eggman to attack me, go in for chip damage, hit, dodge, dodge, pick up my ring, and eventually I did it. Not only did I beat the game deathless, but I beat it deathless as the hardest character in the game. That's gotta count for something, right? Well, it's good for 2 achievements. Beating the game as Amy and beating the game deathless. And with that achievement done and dusted, it really feels like a big weight is off of my shoulder. Because, well, now I won't have to do any extra full runs of the game, which has definitely brought my playtime down drastically. And it seems like we're done with having to play the game full through altogether. Not. It turns out we have to do it again, this time with Sonic and Tails. If you input up, right, down, right, L, right, R, right, A on the main menu starting on Sonic, you unlock Sonic and Tails playable together. It's just like in Sonic 2, where Tails is basically useless or gets in your way. But thankfully, there aren't achievements for every single boss for these 2 characters, although I would have taken the extra Retro Achievements points, but whatever. So I can easily only talk about the highlights of this playthrough, and you won't have to suffer through me talking about playing the levels casually for the 95,384th time. So on this run, I was able to pick up the Chaos Emerald in Casino Paradise Zone without any issue, then both of the Chaos Emeralds in Ice Mountain as well, leaving us with only 1 Chaos Emerald left, the 7th and final one. Unfortunately, while I did give it a shot this time around, I failed. So we'll have to grind for this one shortly. But I finished the playthrough up without a game over, which was required for the achievement to trigger, and we are finally actually done with playing this game in its entirety. Now that I have 42 out of 58 of these achievements, I want to regroup for a quick second and take a look at what we have left in the order in which I'm going to do them. So we'll be able to get an achievement for collecting the last emerald, then I'm going to go ahead and do the boss challenges, which require me to beat the bosses with a condition. These are usually damageless, ring requirements, or a mix of damageless with specific characters. Then after that, I'm going to go for the time attack achievements, which require me to beat stages under certain time frames, which I expect to be some of the more difficult achievements that we have left. And I look forward to sharing the process of those because it was really fun. There are 5 of those. So we've talked about 13 of the last 16 achievements. So you might be wondering what we might have left. Well, once I have all the Chaos Emeralds and beat Eggman in X Zone, we can unlock the true ending where we go to the moon, which gives us an achievement. Then for beating that boss, getting the true ending, and then beating that boss again with 25 rings, we'll be able to master the set, which I think will put a nice wrap on this video. But I'll explain how that works as we go along. Let's finish up the last Chaos Emerald and then get into the bosses. So as we know, this last emerald is in Cosmic Angel Zone in the top right of the map. In this one, oh boy, this one is tough. While a lot of the previous special stages just required me to react quickly, I found that I really needed to memorize this stage layout, although it still only took me 7 attempts to get. The best way to do this is to straight up ignore any rings that are in the center of these circles of spikes. It seems like you can get them without being hit, but I wasn't able to do it even once, and it looks like it's very hard anyway. For me, like I said, I made sure to memorize where I needed to go next, and was super efficient with my ring grabbing. I was able to hit the technique ring, which made up for my previous missed rings, and then that was it. I got 208 rings to get the purple Chaos Emerald, which was the last one I needed for the achievement. Okay, now that I've said special or any form of the word 30 times in this video, I'm gonna try and take it out of my vocabulary. I'll consider this next section of video the boss rush portion. I explained how these work already, so I'm gonna get into the specifics. For the battle in Neo Green Hill Zone, we're gonna need to do some damageless hammer-on-hammer action using Amy as our character. This took a bit of practice to figure out since Amy's attacks are a bit less forgiving than the other characters. Where say Sonic gets a pretty decent bounce off of Eggman, making getting away after getting hits in easier, Amy doesn't. This makes it so that our attacks need to be calculated and timed correctly so we don't get hit on the way out, which was really hard to do. The way that I ended up doing this was during every attack cycle, I would let Eggman hit the hammer on my side once, then I would go in for 2 close attacks, then a third one where I would build up momentum to launch over him. Still though, each time I was very close to being damaged. Then for the last hit, when Eggman goes insane mode, it really ended up being luck that I hit him for the final one. This one wasn't too bad if I'm being honest, took me around 15 minutes. Next, I needed to beat the egg press with 130 rings or more. The challenge from this one didn't even come from the boss at all. More of this achievement's runtime came from collecting enough rings around the level. It took me exactly 1 try to finish up this achievement here. This was for sure the easiest one of the boss challenges. The next boss in Casino Paradise had the condition that I needed to have a green shield activated when I beat the boss. So it was kind of a mix of the other 2 I just did. There's a stage gameplay aspect to the level, finding the shield, and I also had to do the boss damageless, which once again wasn't so hard. But things were about to change for the worse. In Ice Mountain Zone, I needed to beat Egg Spider as Tails damageless. And really, this shouldn't have been too hard, but I just kept getting hit, and I really don't know why. This boss isn't particularly hard. Yes, there is the aspect of keeping your O2 levels up while fighting, but Tails can fly, so I should easily be able to breathe when I need to. Well, that became one of the issues, to be honest. I'd go up for air, and every once in a while, I'd get hit, which wasn't ideal. Also, just to note, after a game over, I need to play the level over, so I get 3 attempts, have to replay the level, then I'm back again, which makes any time I lose an attempt to doing something greedy or doing something stupid all the more frustrating. But eventually, I prevailed and came out on top for this achievement. And things only get even harder from here. For Angel Island, I have to beat Mecha Knuckles damageless as Knuckles. This boss can be pretty tough, especially when you're like me who's not too familiar with his attack patterns. Fighting properly really took some getting used to. As Knuckles, you need to use your punch to do damage, so you need to get in real close, which leaves little room for error. Adding to that, it's pretty hard to get a hit in when Mecha Knuckles is doing a spin dash, so I'd wait for him to glide, which gave me a good window. Phase 1 of the fight takes 4 hits, but where this gets all the more frustrating is in Phase 2, where Mecha Knuckles gets faster and also decides that he can now spit homing missiles out of his mouth, sometimes 10 or more in a row, so I would get here frequently. Have to replay Angel Island Act 2, which by the way is a very hard level. I would die multiple times on the way to the boss sometimes, just adding to the runtime of this achievement. This really came down to luck for me in the end. I just needed to get a run where Mecha Knuckles decided to mostly glide for his attacks. I lost multiple runs that were close due to his love for weapons of mass destruction, but I got it. I moved on to what in my opinion is the hardest achievement of the set, the boss in Cosmic Angel Zone. In order to unlock this one, I need to beat the boss with over 100 rings collected, which I would like to give a shout out to the devs of this set because they didn't make it straight up damageless. And that's because there is a shield bubble in the stage, which does give a little bit of leeway, but not nearly enough for me to consider this achievement easy. So there are a few things that make unlocking this one so hard. First, I need to become super familiar with the paths in this level. The first 20 minutes or so of attempts was just me trying to figure out which way would be the easiest and would also lead me to the shield bubble. This ended up a disaster, but after trial and error for God knows how long, I settled with this lower path here with the launchers. But there is an issue with this path, this portion here with the spikes. I needed to be really careful here to just barely squeeze my way through these spikes in order to keep my shield, and a lot of the time I didn't. But okay, eventually we made it to the boss with 100 rings. How hard could it really be? Well, very. Also, if I do fail, there aren't enough rings for me to collect to give it another go, so I have to restart the console and do everything over again. This one really was a roadblock for me. It took over an hour of attempts where I only got a handful of tries at the actual boss, because, well, I was constantly getting hit. Then when I would get to the boss, I would get hit again, either by poor timing on my part or these bubbles that are hard to dodge. I can't lie though, I was making this harder on myself. It seems like using Knuckles or Tails in this fight is far easier since they can just fly or glide over the bubbles, but I'm stubborn. Eventually though, against all odds, after an hour plus of this achievement alone, I made it through and beat the boss with over 100 rings. Now we have one last boss achievement left, which was getting through all of X Zone damageless, which includes the Sonic 1 boss, Sonic 2 boss, and the main boss in this level. If I'm being real though, the first two are not even hard. I think I maybe got hit one time on either of them. But also, now that I'm a pro at the duck and hide strategy, I was able to get through this one in just a few attempts. Like usual, I sat on the opposite side, ducked, waited for either the hand attack or for him to swap sides. It's funny how the final boss achievement ended up being easier than most of the others. After beating X Zone, I accidentally let the cutscene where Sonic goes super and then flies to Moon Zone play. So I got the achievement for going to Moon Zone. Let's pretend that I didn't just spoil the whole game and ending for this video. Okay, now it's time for time trials, the part of this whole set I've been looking forward to the most throughout this whole video. Because, well, if you don't know, I come from a speedrunning background and I like doing things fast. The Act 1s of the first 5 zones have a time trial for us to do, so let's get back into Neo Green Hill. I think that the best thing to do, since most of these are pretty short, is to just kind of commentate over the attempts that unlock the achievement. So since this is the first level in the game, things are pretty straightforward, figuratively and literally. The start is super speed world, and then I had to make sure to mostly keep on this upper path. There are a couple of jumps here and there, but it was very easy to get this one done in under 45 seconds. Then for the next stage, I did have a little trouble, but this is the route I took. I held right around the loop, then up the springs, then I took the upper path here because eventually, after these red moving platforms, you get access to a speed shoe, which, well, we're in a speedrunning challenge here, so the speed shoe's good. Then hold right a bit through this pipe transporter thingy, then the path towards the end is very straightforward. There isn't too much variation here after the speed shoe. Casino Paradise took me a bit to find the right way to go. Interestingly, I found that taking the upper path on this one wasn't actually the best way. I stayed low until I found the speed shoe, then literally brute forced my way to the end. Like seriously, I sight read a lot of this level until I made it to the end in under 1 minute and 10 seconds. Ice Mountain ended up being the hardest one for me to do because there is a ton of tight movement in this one, especially towards the start here, where I need to get the right trajectory so I can make it through the beginning without getting stuck in the snow. Then there are a lot of springs that I obviously need to hit, but they're in some pretty tough spots. Some are on slopes, some of them are traps like this one that forces me to get hit if I'm moving too fast. But this stage was super satisfying to do just because of how fast you're going most of the time. You go around loops, down slopes, grabbing 2 different speed shoes. It's just a ton of good fun. This underwater platforming section was another roadblock for me sometimes. I would often just fall down, making my run impossible to finish. But after 2 separate runs that made it within a second of the time I needed, I finished this up and moved on to the final time attack. Angel Island should have been very hard, and at first it was, specifically because of the section with the moving platforms you need to use that really slow you down. Like, I mean really slow you down. It's bad. But because it was already midnight when I was playing this, I decided to swallow my pride and use Tails in order to get through this level. But with Tails, I was able to get through the start, no problem. And when I got to the rolling rocks and moving platform section, I was able to just pass that by flying. Listen, I know it was cheap, but I really had my mindset on beating the set in that session, and I wanted to just get it over and done with. After that point in the stage though, the game kind of played itself. Run right, stand on this rock, and then you're at the end for the final time attack achievement of the entire set. Now we only have 2 achievements left here. I know, time flies when you're watching a Pajamajohn video. They both take place in the moon zone, which we accidentally went to earlier. One is for beating it, and one is for beating it with 25 or more rings left. Sonic turns super, and we're on to beating this big ol' robotic boss, who is pretty annoying by the way. He has 3 main attacks. These things, rock attack, and then lasering the ground over and over again so that I'm stun locked and can't do anything for multiple seconds. All the while, since you're supersonic, you are slowly draining rings. Thankfully, the robot guys spit out a decent number of rings if you dash into them, so you can keep your ring count pretty high if you play well. The boss here can only be hit in the head, so you need to wait for a good opening to get a dash in on him. I wanted to try and collect these last 2 achievements at once because I want to be a true gamer, so I made sure to farm as many rings as I could while I did this. The final boss here, if I'm being honest, is more of a set piece than anything. A little reward for taking the time for getting all of the Chaos Emeralds. It's not very hard at all. After a few minutes of getting lasered constantly and collecting rings, I beat the Mecha Eggman boss thing, got the final 2 achievements of this set. With that, after 9 hours and 6 minutes of gameplay, I had mastered Sonic Advance for the Game Boy Advance. This was an extremely fun set, and I had a blast playing through this game for the first time in God knows how long. It also gave me the opportunity to finally see the true ending since I had never gotten the emeralds in this one before. Hey, if you're still watching, make sure to like and comment